Cool. The great thing about this storytelling work is that it works for anything and everyone. I do this work for communities in Storyville, but I've also done this work for credit unions. I've done this work for hospital systems. I've done this work for nonprofits. And what's great is that this process that I'm going to walk you through and that you are going to experience and that you will do and learn yourself today can be applied to whatever it is you're doing. Even if you're not a marketer, even if you can't write a lick, even if you don't think you're a photographer, all of this stuff can apply in some way to what you're doing. The thing that I am so infatuated about is our principles. Like, what are things that are true regardless of context? Because to me, like, if you're going to spend time doing something, do something that transfers, that applies to a bunch of different situations. And I'm very fortunate that in my experience, I've stumbled upon something that is an immutable fact, in that humans need to see human faces and they need to hear human stories. I want to be transparent with you, hopefully in a way that encourages you, that I did not go to school for this in any way. I'm a middle school teacher by trade. I taught 5th and 6th grade at St. John's Elementary Lutheran School in Bay City, Michigan. I taught a multi-grade classroom, I directed all the choirs, and I played organ for church. And then my twin brother lost his job, and I was like, hey, Matt, I'm living in a house by myself, so move in with me while you figure out what your next step is. We got to the year mark, and he didn't really know his next step still. So I was like, Matt, why don't you do something that you already know how to do? Build guitars. He was previously a guitar builder in Virginia. And so one day he set up shop in a closet in my garage, this little like 3x3 closet, literally. And he started building guitars in my garage. And unbeknownst to us, he became one of 2 people in the world to build steel body acoustic resonator guitars by hand. And his wait list took off like a rocket. Everybody wanted this kind of very rare handmade instrument. And he ended up with a 3-year-long wait list. So you pay him $500 deposit, and then you have to wait 36 months to finally get the thing that you paid for. It sounds cool. It's a terrible way to run a business because nobody wants to wait 3 years. So I was looking for a way to get out of teaching. I knew I love kids, I love the act of teaching. I knew that teaching in a classroom was not going to be my forever situation, and I needed a way out. He needed an employee, so I left teaching to go work for him. And we moved to Saginaw, Michigan, and we were working out of the basement of his duplex in the darkest, dingiest, dirtiest little dungeon-like basement you ever could imagine. During winter, we'd be sitting over our workbenches, literally with our Carhartt coats on and fingerless gloves, building in this basement. We didn't know what we were doing. Neither one of us had been business owners before. The closest thing I had ever come to actually making something with my hands were little log cabin crafts that we would do in my 5th grade classroom. I didn't know what I was doing, but I had a little bit of background in photography, and so I got drafted to build guitars, but then also to help with the marketing. Again, I had no idea what I'm doing. So what we did know was that in the handmade instrument world, pardon my language here, but it's a lot of BS in the handmade instrument world, because if you're going to charge somebody 10 grand, 15 grand for a guitar, you got to talk it up like it's touched by God himself. Like everything is superlative. It's perfection in every way. And we knew that was BS, and it sounded fake and gross, and we didn't want to be that. And so what our decision was that we wanted to be real. And so we took this very documentary style approach to the work that we were doing. And so we would show people successes, yes, but we'd also show them the giant pile of guitars that we had ruined as we're trying to figure out how to make these things. And we would play funny games and do ridiculous things, and we would video conversations with people that played our instruments, not famous people, just your average Joe in his living room that knows 2 chords. It's like, yeah, Joe, we love you, man. And that was our marketing strategy. And to our surprise, it worked. By the end of the first year, we were building guitars 3 times as fast, and our wait list was still 3 years long. Not only that, we had somehow cultivated this ridiculous family-like community, not just selling guitars. People would follow us that wouldn't ever buy one of our guitars ever, simply because they wanted to follow us. And so every single week we would get people sending us gifts. A 6-pack of beer from Florida, that's their local brewery, or they would send us instruments that they made, or photos of their families and kids. There was a restaurant owner in Maine who sent us, no joke, a bucket like this tall of live lobsters from Maine, because he wanted us to have a live Maine lobster dinner. We even got an ex-girlfriend's boot sent to us once. Why? And so we started thinking about like why is this happening? It's not because I'm a good marketer, because I wasn't. Why is this working? What is the principle behind this that's making this fit? And I loved working for my brother. I loved the work. Unfortunately, like you know from the keynote, I got really, really poor. And something had to happen. I had to do something else in order to make it. And so I fell back on this human faces, human stories philosophy. And originally I was focusing just on small businesses. And here are these small businesses who think like everybody wants to shop you because your beer is the best in the world. And honestly, your beer is not the best in the world. But we feel like we need to say that it is, because that's how we compete, right? Or our pizza is the best pizza in the world. It's probably not the best pizza in the world. So essentially what we're doing is we're telling people lies because we feel like that's how we need to market. We have to be the best. And so we have to tell them that they're best. And that's the wrong play. And so what I would do is I would go into these businesses and say, yes, your pizza is fantastic, but Kevin Novolino, people are not buying your pizza because it's the best in the world. It's because they love Kevin Novolino. Here's this Brooklyn talking guy from New York City, the only guy from New York City who lives in Bay City, Michigan. People love Kevin. Why do they buy his pizza? It's not because it's amazing, it's because they love Kevin. And so it's about the person behind the business who happens to make great pizza. And that was my strategy, going into these businesses and saying, how can we communicate the people behind these businesses to create real, authentic relationships that also happen to be helping the business economically? And so then I had coffee with a friend in Saginaw, Michigan, and he was like, hey, did you hear about the Riverfront Saginaw contract? I was like, I don't even know what Riverfront Saginaw is. And apparently a group of volunteers had formed this committee to try to help change the narrative that was being told publicly about Saginaw. And if you're from Michigan, you tend to know Saginaw as a place where you go to either get poor or get shot. That's what people know Saginaw as. One of the first stories, and I'll get to how I got to the stories in a second. One of the first stories I did in Saginaw was at a antique store, Court Street Antiques. And after we finished the interview, the owner said to me, hey, can I tell you a story? And I said, yes, please do. And she said, I just had a woman from Traverse City, which is like the tourist mecca of Michigan, call me on the phone and say, hey, I'm going to come to your shop tomorrow to shop some antiques. She said, awesome, I'll see you tomorrow. So tomorrow comes and she gets a phone call, and it's the woman from Traverse City, and she says, hey, I'm here. She goes, great, I'm open. Come in. And the woman says, can you come get me? And the owner's like, what do you mean? She's like, I'm parked in front of your business, and I know about Saginaw, and I'm afraid to walk across the sidewalk. Saginaw is one of the most amazing communities in the entire world, and I say that with absolute confidence because I've been to a lot of them. There is something in the dirt and water there that makes it what it is. Home to some of the most beautiful, passionate, energetic, grassrootsy people you will ever meet. The median income in Saginaw is $18,000. 67% of the population is Alice population or under. GM in 1980, I believe it was, that was the economy. GM said, bye, boom. bottom fell out of the economy. And that's how Saginaw got its reputation. And so this group of people knew that something had to be changed, because here is this amazing community, but the rest of the world knows that's where you go to get poor or get shot. And so they knew they had to change it. And so this guy I was with making coffee said, well, they need some help. They need some marketing help. And I think what you're doing would apply here. And I was like, Wayne, we're talking a city of 47,000 people. And he was like, yeah, but I think we can do it. And I said, okay. So I was like, I think I'm going to do it. And he said, well, you better hurry because the proposals are due tomorrow morning. So I drove all the way back to my office and was like, okay, Phil, how are you going to market a city that is not only 47,000 people, but it's complex, half black, half white, completely impoverished, like a history, like this gigantic history. I fell back on this principle. Well, what works with businesses? Human faces, human stories. And if the principle is true, it would work for a business of one, and it would work for a community of 50,000. Because principles are true regardless of context. So I wrote them this proposal based on 4 words: human faces, human stories. I turned it in the next morning and they said, we love it. And so what Saginaw does is, instead of marketing itself in a way that says, we're the best city ever, because everybody knows it's not true. Instead of saying, well, we have so much great restaurants and retail and all of these other things, which is also not true, because all it takes is 30 minutes in Detroit to know that you're a liar. What we turned it into was every single day, somebody can pull up Facebook and there is a face from a person in Saginaw with a story that they have lived themselves, that they are telling in their own words. We let the people of Saginaw market Saginaw itself. Principle 1 in this marketing is humans are more important than things. And we say that all the time in community work, right? What's the greatest thing about your community? It's our people. And we mean it. But if I were to look at most communities' marketing, what do you think I would see most often? Not people. Yeah, buildings, trees, sunset, river. There's the mayor. Shop, pizza, beer. So do you see how we're sending mixed messages? We say, I love my community because of the people here, and then we hide them under a little rock. And then we say, well, people really want craft beer, so we'll do that instead. This is how small communities win. It's when we embrace this principle that humans are more important than things. And I'll tell you why. Because if I say, come to Philtown, USA, because we've got great pizza, all it takes is somebody to say, yeah, but it's not as good as the pizza that I had, and now I have nothing, right? All it takes for me to say, we've got so many great places to shop, for somebody to say, I've been to Philtown, USA, and you have 2 places to shop. Jig is up, right? Now I have nothing. But what if I told you that Bay City, Michigan is the only place you can get pizza made by Kevin Novolino? There's only one of them, and he's in Bay City. That's something, you're playing a game that you can win. You can only experience our community in this community. Because the people in your community are there, they're nowhere else. And that's how you win. A lot of times we fall into a resource race. We have so much, fill in the blank. And then you lose, because people that have been elsewhere, they're like, you don't really have that much. So principle 1, humans are more important than things. This is true even if it's a building project. You're renovating this historic building. Does the average person, Joe Schmo on the street, who's Alice population, who's got a hole in their house, do they care about your historic building? I'm going to tell you the truth, they do not. They care about the hole in their house. They care about the fact they can't feed their family. That's what they care about. And so you coming and saying, hey guys, this is a $2.1 million project. They're going, and so the good things that we say to people, if we don't understand their perspective, can actually come across as bad things. Bay City, I'll be transparent about my community. We love to say we're a great place to shop and to eat and to have great events. 50% of us are Alice population, so they can't afford to shop there, they can't afford to eat there, and they can't afford to go and attend any of those events. So do you see how the division starts? If the community is like, we're a great place to live, work, and play, and they're like, we can't afford to live, work, and play here. How that division starts. And so we have to shift the narrative to how that historical building helps people. How is it going to make people's lives better? Who's behind that project and what is their motivation? Raise your hand if you've ever seen in your community a good thing happen, but the people in the community are like, that was stupid. There you go. Uptown Bay City, it was a toxic wasteland. There used to be a shipyard back in the heyday where Bay City was a shipbuilding town. Toxic waste dump. A developer comes in, he had to do a bunch of environmental remediation. Did a great job, created this development where a lot of local businesses moved in with apartments and condos and things like that. It was beautiful. He crushed it. We needed him. And then he put out a video, marketing video, promo video, the unveiling of Uptown Bay City. And Bay City, blue collar town, 50% Alice population. This video shows 3 women in slow motion with shopping bags over their arms, just laughing, making it look like this is Hollywood Boulevard, USA. A lot of people in Bay City hate Uptown because that was their perception. Here was their developer saying, look at what I've done, look at what I've given you this great thing, but he missed the message that people needed to hear in that Bay City. You're amazing. I want to be part of your community. I want to support your community. I'm going to give you the living or the housing that you desperately need. I'm going to give you the spaces you desperately need for small businesses. Instead of taking that tangent, he said, I'm going to make it look like Hollywood, and he lost everybody. And that's why this principle is important. We have to understand the humans in our community, even if it's things that we're dealing with. How do we show the humans behind the project and what their motivations are? How do we show the humans that this project helps? How do we show the humans in our community that make it what it is? So principle 1, humans are more important than things. Principle 2, the relationship people have with a place is determined by their perception, knowledge, and experience of it. The first time I lived in Bay City as a teacher, people would ask me, hey, Phil, what do you think about Bay City? I would say it sucks. The roads are terrible and there's nothing to do here. And then when I moved to Saginaw, people would say, hey, Phil, what do you think about Saginaw? I'd say it sucks. The roads are terrible and there's nothing to do here. I don't think that way anymore. I'm absolutely head over heels in love with these communities. What changed? My knowledge and my experience of it. Why do people always default to there's nothing to do here and the roads are bad? I'm going to tell you why, because I was one of them. That's how most people experience our communities. You love your community because you know it. You work in it. You talk to the people. You know that they care. You're trying to do something good. Those people don't know it. What do? They do what I did. I woke up every single day. I went to work. I clocked in at work. I drove to the grocery store or to McDonald's to grab food on the way home. And then I drove back. What was my experience of my community? It was I wasn't doing anything because I had to be at work all the time and I had to drive on the roads every day. You see? So we love to throw people under the bus that say that, like how dare they? How dare they talk about my community? And to a certain level, there's some ignorance. People have to want to engage. But at the same time, we have to understand their perspective, is that they're saying it because that's their experience of it. So we can't expect them to say anything different. And that's where we have to step in to shape their knowledge and their perception of their places through stories like this, through humans who care about the place, who are working hard for the place, they're trying to help you, they're trying to make your life better, all of these things. Those people don't know that because they haven't been told. And that's where story-centered marketing comes in. Principle 3, there are prerequisites to action. Marketing is always about, we want something to happen at the end. We want somebody to support this project, this new business, shop local, all of these things. But unfortunately, what we do a lot of times is we think that we can just tell people what to do. Shop local. Okay, we will. That's what we expect to have happen because, right, like, we gotta support our local businesses. It's obvious. But is that how we work? If I came to you and I said, what's your name?
Mike.
Mike, if I came to Mike and be like, Mike, you know what? I'm pretty good at this marketing thing. Give me $10,000 to do it. Look at Mike's face. He's like, no, like, I don't even know what to say.
Oh, I have words.
That's not how we work. That's not how we work. What actually happens, even if we're unconscious about it, is that we go through a series of steps that eventually lead us to take the action that somebody wants us to take. Take the iPhone, for instance. Maybe we'll use this as an example. Step one, Apple knows that they can't just say, Mike, buy our iPhone, and expect Mike to buy the iPhone. They gotta move Mike through the process first. They gotta date. They gotta figure each other out. They gotta say, hey, this is what I could bring to your life, Mike. And Mike's like, okay, well, I'm kind of looking for that. You gotta move through the process first. So step one is that they have a great commercial that shows all these hip people like having fun with their iPhones, capturing your attention. It looks really sleek. The brand is great. It looks clean. It looks high class. There's a reason people pay $1,200 for a phone because it looks like it's worth it. They're capturing your attention in that way. Step one, check. Step two, you need to create a sense of trust. Communities move at the speed of trust. Nothing can happen without trust, and we're going to talk about that in a second. This is people pay $1,200 for a phone. I need to trust that I'm going to get $1,200 worth of value out of it. And so on their website, they're going to show you all these things that you can do. Raise your hand right now in this room if you have an iPhone. You see all these people, everybody, almost everybody. I see that lone Android user turning all our text to green in the group thread. But almost everybody in America has an iPhone. So why would, like, there's got to be something good about it. Peer pressure is. Yeah, Mike, the contrarian over here. I love it. Step two, check. Everybody's got one. It can do a lot of great things. Three, demonstrate value. Well, it's got 120,000 gigabytes of memory. And everybody's got one, and I can do all these apps, and it's going to make my work better. Designers love Apple because we have this idea it's going to make my design and my creativity better. They're demonstrating the value. Check. And now, after step four, then they can say, hey, buy an iPhone. And we say, okay. It happens unconsciously. Now, you might be thinking, well, I mean, it's like every single marketing communication I ever have to do has to move it through the steps. No, the great thing about story-based marketing is it does all of those steps at once. Step one, capturing attention. The most important resource in the work that you're doing right now is attention. If you don't have people's attention, you do not exist. You don't. It doesn't matter if you did a $2.1 million project. If people aren't paying attention to it, it's a black hole in your community. They don't know it exists. So you have to capture people's attention first. There's a study done by Cedars-Sinai Hospital with epilepsy patients, and they wanted to figure out what caused their seizures. So they took a bunch of epilepsy patients, they sat them in this chair, and they hooked all these electrodes to their brains. And they in front of this giant screen with hundreds of different images. And then they attached this technology to track their eyes so that they could see exactly what images people would look at for how long. The idea that if they looked at an image that lit up a part of the brain that they could say, well, that part of the brain lights up during a seizure, they could say, there's a clue in that image that tells us that could trigger a seizure. And so they did this study, and it failed. It bombed. They have no idea what caused the seizure. But what they did discover that when every single person, in every single case, people's eyes instinctively went to human faces to make eye contact with them, and they stayed there for longer than anything else. Doesn't matter if you have the most beautiful sunrise in the world. Doesn't matter if you have the most gorgeous looking pizza or the most stupendous looking historical business. When you put that on Facebook, people go, no, selfie. No, selfie. They're not looking at it, you don't exist. The average attention span of a goldfish is 0.7 seconds to 1 second. The average attention span of a human being is 0.3 to 0.5 seconds. We have a shorter attention span than goldfish. So we need to stack our deck as high as we can with all the tricks up our sleeve to try to command people's attention. Again, doesn't matter if you've got a $10 million project that's going to change the face of your entire community. If people aren't paying attention to it, they do not exist. You have to capture their attention first. That second one, after you have their attention, nothing can happen without trust. Trust is the most important feeling in your entire community. Why? Because it goes all the way back to our very first communities. If I didn't trust you to be in our little tribe of 10, to go out and hunt while I stayed in garden, we could all die. Right? What's your name?
Alex.
What's that?
Alex.
Alex. Alex is the hunter. I'm the gardener. Alex goes out to hunt, and I'm like, oh yeah, Alex is finally out of here. I'm gonna take a nap under this tree. Woo. And he comes back, and I haven't gardened anything. We could all die. Alex needs to trust me in order for us to actually have a community. Because what's going to happen if Alex doesn't trust me? He's not going to go out hunting anymore, or he's going to kick me out of the tribe, and now I just died. We have to trust each other to fill in these gaps. So if trust is the most important thing in our community, it's the thing that makes everything work. How do you create trust? Well, that seems like a really complicated and terrible question to try to ask. There must be like an infinite number of things. Maybe I have to be funny, maybe I have to be qualified, maybe I have to have a lot of charisma as I walk into a room. And in the 1970s, scientists were like, yeah, how do we create trust? Why do people buy from one brand and not another brand? And so they studied all of these businesses to try to crack the code, like what is the thing? How do we create trust enough for somebody to give a business money? And they found there's only two qualities that create trust: warmth and competence. Are you friendly enough that having a relationship with you could benefit in my life in some way? Are you outgoing? Are you interested in me? Combined with competence. In other words, do you have a skill, knowledge, experience, or a resource that in having a relationship with you, I could potentially benefit from? If you're friendly, you could give those resources to me to benefit my life in some way. And that signals to our brain, oh, I can trust this person. We need to convey both, though. Because if it's just warmth and not competence, we don't trust people like that. It's the neighbor that we only see when we happen to get mail at the same time. Hey Joe, hey Phil, how's the kids? Good, see you. I mean, he's friendly enough, but he doesn't bring any sort of value to my life. And so do I trust Joe? I don't think so. Or if somebody's really, really friendly, but they're really, really unqualified at what they do. Not gonna name any names because everyone's giggling. They're great people, right? But they're just terrible at their job. You trust that person? No, you don't. They're a great human. But when somebody says, hey, do you want to partner with this person on a $50 million contract that would be transformative for 10,000 people? You're gonna say, no. Well, you have to display both warmth and competence. If it's just competence, but not warmth, that signals to us that that person has a lot of something, but if I form a relationship with them, they're going to drop me a hat. This is why rich people have the stereotype that they're mean. Because they have this huge amount of resource, but we get the impression that they're not friendly and they wouldn't help us if we needed help. And so that's why we have the stereotype, like, I don't want to engage with that rich person because they could say, hey, Phil, you're pretty nice, I'm gonna help you. No, I'm not. And then we have nothing. So if you don't have your community's trust, if you don't have your coworkers' trust, if you don't have any of that, you have nothing. If you increase trust, everything becomes easier. And you have to start planting that seed now. Well, how does like a brownfield development, or how does a main street, these things, these inanimate things convey warmth and confidence? Human faces, human stories. Remember Yoko's face? Smiling, eye contact. She's a nice old lady. And then she tells you, I grew up in Tokyo, Japan. The story goes on later to talk about how she moved from Japan and started this Japanese cultural center and started one of the most gorgeous green tea ceremonies in the entire state of Michigan. You go and it's like going into church and everybody's just moving very slowly. It's absolutely magical. And then at the end of the story, what if she asks you, hey, Phil, do you think you'd go to my green tea ceremony on Saturday? I say, heck yeah, Yoko, I will. Why did we put out that story? It's because that Saturday was Japan Fest at the Japanese Cultural Center. Now you might think, well, Phil, shouldn't you just pound the community with, this is the date and time, this is the date and time, this is the date and time, and then you get really angry at the community when they don't show up at this really great event. No, you have to move through the steps. You have to earn their trust. You trust Yoko? Yeah, you do. You lived through World War II, she moves here, she's an absolutely beautiful human being, and then when she finally makes the ask, do you trust her? Yeah. Do you think that green tea ceremony is going to be worth it? Yes, you do. And so now you have a higher chance of actually going. Nothing can happen without trust. And 5, I won't read this again, but love is the goal. Love is the goal. I use this example, it's graphic, I'm sorry, but I'm going to use it because it proves the point. I'm standing here, raise your hand if you have a child. I do too, I have 3 of them, gorgeous daughters. I'm standing here, one of your children is standing right next to me, a bus is coming right to us. Who do you save?
Your own.
Your child. Why? Because you love them. That's in this case, how life is going to be lost. One life will be lost. What's the difference? You love this person greater than you love me. And so when we're in our communities or in our projects, it feels like we're constantly hitting a wall over and over and over again. Like we just can't get people to move in the same direction or care enough or do all of these things. We have to go all the way back to the beginning. There's a trust problem. There's a love problem. And if we address that first, everything after becomes easier. That's how we self-sabotage our communities, is when we ignore the emotional part of our humanity by instead saying, yeah, but it's going to do so good. And look at these numbers. And look, there's a lot of money invested and we made 17 jobs. Cool, but you got to care. People got to love your place first. They got to care about it first. Love is always the goal. So this is the part where where we're going to get into you actually doing this, which is always my fun part. So let's say that you are like, yeah, I want to try this story-based marketing, this human-based marketing. There's some rules here because you can screw it up. Just like I screwed it up at the beginning. Rule number 1, your city already has a story. You can't rewrite the history of your place because everybody knows the history of your place or the situation. So go to my situation in Saginaw, Michigan. Here I am, this white kid from Bay City. I lived in Saginaw, but I was living in Bay City at that point. White kid from Bay City coming into a city that's 50% black, 50% white. The fear was from the community, and they let me know, was that I was going to be this white kid going into this black community, trying to rewrite their narrative. Now, this is a population of people that their history is people trying to come in and take things from them. And so I had to get in the social media comments and say, hey guys, I 100% understand why you think this, but give me 1 year to prove you differently. If you come into your community and you're like, well, we really have to like amplify the fact that we're cool and we're hip and we have like this new trendy kind of restaurant concept, the retail, because that's what the young people like, and those become the sole stories that you're telling. Sooner or later, people are going to catch on and they're like, nope, that's not our community. And now you blew it. You'll never get their trust back. And so you have to amplify the best your community has to offer, not bias your marketing to only highlight the things that you think people will love. Rule 2, Tell a good story, don't try to sell it. I mentioned earlier that I also do this work for a hospital system. And it's really great because like hospitals, they literally save people's lives. And they're the only people in our community who can do that. Like you are dying, where do you go? To the hospital so those people can save you. But we don't get to see their work. They're in this hospital every day saving people's lives and we don't know them. So I go into these operating rooms and things like that and take photos and I interview them. And it's really, really incredible work. The first time I did it for a hospital system, it had a brilliant story series. Day one, it's getting launched on social media, and I pull up their Facebook page, and boom, here's this picture, this gorgeous portrait that I took. I'm gonna pat myself on the back because it was gorgeous. But half of it was the logo of the hospital system. They nearly covered this person's entire face with the logo. Lost it, killed the entire story series because what do people see as they're scrolling on Facebook? Not the human face, they see the logo, and automatically their brain goes, nope, not important. Every single day, you will see 3,000 advertisements. By the end of this week, your brain will have consumed more information than a person living 100 years ago did in their entire life. Your brain can't survive that. Your brain needs calories to work. And so it literally would die if it tried to pay attention to all of that information. It uses, I think it's like 30% of your calories every day. And so its survival tactic is to use the unconscious mind to filter out things that it doesn't think are important. Boom, 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 boom. Important. Boom, 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 boom. And that's how it survives every day. Our brain, because of our culture, we have taught people's brains how to be really, really good at filtering out advertisements. Do you remember the 3,000 ads that you see every day? No, you don't. You may not even remember one of them because your brain doesn't allow you to do it. So when we tell our stories or we're trying to market and we come across very professional with very hoity-toity language and a great brand, the logo, it's just so well crafted and I feel like I'm a professional marketer. What our audience looks at it as is not important. And they never actually see this thing that we thought was really great because we're communicating to them that their brain doesn't need to pay attention to us. And that's what that logo did. They tried to sell it too hard. If they just let that picture, that face be as big as it could be and let the story stand for itself, it would have accomplish the goal, but instead they covered it by trying to sell it too hard. So you let the stories stand for themselves. The less you, the better. Sometimes people are like, okay, I'm going to do this, and then it turns into like Phil is the face of Philville Main Street, and like every day they're seeing people's my face on their feed. Sooner or later, people are going to get annoyed with Phil, and I'm like, Phil's not my kind of guy. It's not about you; it's about your community. And then rule number 4, believe you have an infinite number of stories to tell. Even if you're a community of 200 people, you have at least 200 stories. If you're a community of 2,000 people, you have at least 2,000 stories. If you're a business of 2, you have at least 2 stories. And then you have the stories of all the people that you help and all the people that are connected to them and the people in the community that help you do your work. And so you see how you can spread these stories over and over and over again. It's not just about you. You've got an infinite number of stories. Believe that stories can change the world because they can. I'm going to be honest that I don't have a lot of hope for society. The internet, crazy, right? Social media, they have cracked down with the chemicals in our brains. You feel your phone vibrate in your pocket and you're staring at your phone on the table. They're inside our brains. So in that capacity, I don't have a lot of hope. What I do have hope for is that the only way that we can win is if we change the person who uses that stuff. If we change them as a human being, that's how we might win. And the power of these stories is that that's how we can actually understand each other. It's an experience that we can only have in person, talking to each other one-on-one. Social media can't replace that. The internet can't replace that. And so this is how stories can change the world. We're so stressed out, we're so angry, we're so conflicted between each other. Why? It's because we never take a second to say, you want to live a better life? I do too. Are you kind of stressed out by work? I am too. Have you been through something really intense in your life? I have too. That's how we create this common ground that should start all of the work that we do in our communities. But when we start from the back end, look at this project, look at this stuff, look at these things, you may not be talking in the right way to the right kind of people. So here's Storytelling 101. I'm going to give you the 3-step process that I use for communities and hospitals, small businesses, and all of these things. Great part of this is that you don't have to be a great marketer, you don't have to be a great writer, you don't have to be a photographer or anything like that. Because honestly, at the beginning, I was none of those things. I'm still working on a lot of those things, but this process that, oh, okay, I can do my marketing a little bit better in a human way, in a story-focused way. Here's an example. You can't see or read any of this, but the anatomy of the kind of story that we're going to practice doing is like a one post, one picture story. See, here's a picture of the guy I interviewed. Here is the story. We're going to use social media as the implementation of this. And so let's break it down. Again, you don't have to read any of this. You're just kind of looking at the shapes. It's quotes only. I'll tell you in a second how to get the quotes. It's not writing it down. You can use technology here, but it's quotes only. Why? One, it takes out the requirements of having to be a good writer. Because if I'm not a good writer and I say, hey, Matt, we're going to do story-based marketing, and Matt's like, I'm a terrible writer, I can't spell, immediately Matt's like, I can do it. But what's great about going quotes only is that all it takes is for you to take the words the person said and for you to show them to someone else. I don't have to be a writer. And that's great. The second part is that it keeps the stories typically shorter, because you're not filling it in with all of your other words and trying to set the stage and things like that. And the third reason is related to that, in that it removes a stylistic element of it that might turn people off. Bless her heart, there was a marketing director, city-based city government, that saw the work that we were doing with Storyville, and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. And I said, yeah, you go do it. It's gonna be awesome. But she was a former journalist and also kind of an aspiring creative writer. And so you pull up one of her stories and they'd be like, it was a cold, rainy Tuesday morning. And I walked in and shook off my boots. Some people might love that. I didn't. And so immediately that was a turnoff for me, because it felt like she was trying to insert herself in this story. And so if it's just quotes only, it's essentially, when somebody sees this on Facebook, it feels like we're having a conversation. And typically you don't walk away from conversations judging people based on their style, or like, I really like that person, but the vocabulary that they use is just, no. Quotes only. Lead. First part, first sentence, first words, the most important. Because that's, remember, you have 0.3, 0.5 seconds to get people's attention. If the lead is terrible, people aren't going to read the rest of it. My point is this, is that when you're recording a conversation with somebody, they are not going to start off your conversation with a compelling lead, because they're not the storyteller. Chances are they've never been interviewed like this in their entire lives. And so you, as a story crafter, there might be a better lead when you look at the transcript 2 minutes in. What you do is you move that to the front, boom, because you have to be an advocate for the person's story. If you know, now you know, that those first words have to be the hook, you have to put the words that they said that are the best chance of getting people to actually read the story at the beginning. Is that unethical? No, it is not. Because they said it. You just moved it. And we'll talk about those techniques in a second. Simple sentences in short sections. Notice all the white space. It's typically longer than your typical social media post. But when you look at it, it looks like very readable chunks. You're aiming for what shorter the better is typical when I tell people. 5th grade reading level. As soon as people see like a giant wall of text, they're going to say, I don't have time for that. Even if it was going to take them 2 minutes to just they don't have time for it. So when in doubt, shorter is better. And then finally, the big finish, especially on social media, this is the part that is so important because a big emotional finish or something that ties it up with a bow. I'm 30 years in. 5 more to go. Like, comment, share. That's so important because especially if I'm a Main Street community without a marketing budget, I have to do something that gets people engaged because on Facebook says, oh, lots of people like it and they're commenting and they're sharing. We're going to share it to more people. And that's how things go viral. It's through engagement. They see a lot of views, they see a lot of engagement. They're like, this is going to keep people on our platform for longer. So we're going to show it to more people. And so it has to be a big finish because here's the moment of decision if I like this or not. And if I do, I'm going to like, comment, share, and then the algorithm's going to show it to 100, 1,000, 10,000 more people. Yoko's story was seen by 100,000 people in 24 hours. Because there's that emotional pull there that got people engaged in it. Single portrait picture, why? It's that eye contact. If I have a big picture, one picture of a human face and they're looking directly at the camera, I'm leveraging that physiological impulse to find somebody's face and make eye contact. This is why selfies are a thing. Why are selfies, like why do we have a new word for selfies? It's because we love them so much. Why? No offense, it's not because every single person is beautiful. It's because making that eye contact, making that human face contact fulfills a physiological need in us that we know we need, but at a subconscious level. It says, ooh, someone's paying attention. Ooh, someone's paying attention. Oh, somebody's paying attention. And so when you take one photo and it's a human face, you stack that deck and say, okay, we have a better chance of somebody actually paying attention to us. This works with pizza, it works with beer, it works with buildings. You can have a person standing in the foreground with the building in the back. You have a 1,000 times better chance of actually getting people's attention that way than if it was just the building, because a person's involved. So this is the app that you will use to record and transcribe these conversations, called Otter, otter.ai. They've got a free version, which is more than enough for you to use. They've got a paid version, which gives you 6,000 minutes of transcription a day. What I used to do when I did these stories is I would go in with the field recorder, I'd record the conversations, I'd take the file, I'd put it on a computer back at home. I had this little transcriptionist pedal with 3 different pedals, and the right pedal would stop it, the left pedal would rewind it, and I'd have to lift and I'd listen to the audio and I'd have to transcribe the entire thing and it'd take me forever, and then I'd go through and then clean up the transcription. It was terrible. When I was young and youthful and had a lot of energy, so I could do it. But what Otter does is I put Otter on my phone, I open up the app, I hit record. What's your name?
Kelly.
Kelly?
Kelly.
Kelly. Kelly, where are you from?
Ripley.
Ripley? How far away is that?
About 2.5 hours.
Oh, that's it. Is it hilly, like between? My impression of West Virginia, and Jennifer was making fun of me because I was like, West Virginia is beautiful, and she was like, bro, you were in Ohio pretty much. West Michigan. What's the most beautiful part of West Virginia to you?
Oh, the mountains. And I have to laugh at that story because I had a friend from Michigan when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Would come down and visit, and she was always fascinated by riding her bikes down the hills.
Yeah.
Because she had no hills in Michigan.
Yeah, it's either like complete flat asphalt or farm fields. That's Michigan 101.
But I live in the Ohio part of.
Oh, you do?
Too.
I remember that address too.
I have to drive a little bit to my hills.
Yeah. So what's beautiful about this is you see how I can be engaged in the conversation. I don't have to take notes or anything like that. And what's going to happen, and I wish I could show you on the screen, is Otter is transcribing this conversation in real time. And it's even splitting us into speaker 1, speaker 2. And so I go through all this conversation, I hit stop, and Otter uploads that file to the cloud. So by the time I get back to the office, I can open up my Otter account and boom, there's conversation. And the transcript is there. It's even searchable. So let's say the first 25 minutes of our conversation are mostly just making small talk, but there's a little nugget in there where she talks about a bicycle. I can type in bicycle and it'll go to the bicycle part. And if the transcription, because it's not 100% accurate, it's about 70% accurate. If I need to clean up the words or something, if like it mistranscribes a word, I can click it and it'll start playing the audio right there. I can fix it. Yeah, it's marvelous. If you get the Zoom version, you can admit otter to your Zoom meetings and it will transcribe your Zoom meetings and then it'll also pull out the highlights. So you're thinking like you can have an audio, written, and summary record of every single one of your meetings.
I think that it learns dialect though, because I have used R before and the dialect was challenged.
So it's true, yes, yeah, South Carolina tends to struggle a little bit because of that. A workaround for that is just increasing the audio quality, and so you can go on Amazon, you can buy these little wireless microphones for your iPhone. I use them all the time, super easy, you just plug one in to your iPhone, you clip one on the person, and if the microphone is closer to the person, you've got a better chance of getting a better transcription. If it's over here, I'm sitting here and it's over here, it's gonna struggle a little bit because it can't pick up little nuances. But you can stack it up a little bit like that. So, pre-story, you're gonna determine, okay, how deep into this can I go? If it's just you, you're doing the marketing for a project, you're doing the marketing for a Main Street. My encouragement is always to start less than what you think you can do. So if you're like, I'm gonna do a story every single week for the next 3 years, don't start off that way. Don't do that. Because you're gonna bite off more than you can chew, it's gonna make you really sad and angry and frustrated, and you're gonna say, this storytelling stuff is stupid, and then you'll never do it. So if you're a person thinking, okay, I'm gonna try to do one story-based marketing story every single week, change that to once a month. One post a month. One marketing communication a month, so that you can get the practice down, you can feel out the workflow, and then as you feel more confident, you can increase it. Schedule your time-sensitive stuff, so if you're Main Street and you've got really critical events throughout the year, put that in your marketing. Does anybody have like a barbecue event? Like a food truck event? Somebody tell me an event. A food truck event? You got one?
Yeah.
Okay, so typically what Main Streets will do with like food truck events is they'll make a little flyer in Canva and they'll say like, food truck festival on Thursday, and like, who doesn't love great food truck? And that's it. I'm fine with that. I'm not hating on you because I get it, especially like if you're a crew of one, like you're checking that box and saying, cool, I got my marketing done. I'm moving to the next flyer I gotta put out. But wouldn't it be awesome that along with that little graphic, you went to these food truck owners and you're like, why'd you start your food truck? What do you love about your barbecue? Why'd you start your food truck? What do you love about your pizza? Why'd you start your food truck? What do you love about your macaroni and cheese? Simple 2 questions. You took a picture of them holding the most luscious pan of macaroni and cheese you ever saw. Or the guy's like 300 pounds and he's like chewing on a rack of ribs, talking about how he came out of the womb with a rack of ribs in his hands. Like, who doesn't want to buy a food truck from that, or buy food from that guy? And that the week before, every day on Facebook, you're posting a story leading up to Thursday. You see how that can capture people's attention and demonstrate value? You're showing people what they could eat on Thursday. So now they have a reason to go. You know they should go because you've been there before and you've had that barbecue, but they haven't. You got to show it to them first. So that's a way that you can apply it to something like that. So in your calendar, you're saying, okay, what could be a really useful time that I could use this storytelling content? You know a new business is going to open at the end of July. People got to get to know the new business. So beginning of July, you say, hey, can I ask you a few questions about why you started this business, why you started this business here at this community, and what kind of things people can buy? It's going to be a 5-minute conversation. You transcribe it the week before their grand opening. You put it out on Facebook. Everybody's going to swoon. They're going to all this other stuff. More people are going to be there on Thursday. And so you can be strategic about how you plan this throughout your community. Creating a story bank, that's basically just a giant list of all the possible stories you could possibly think of. And then you go to somebody else and you say, hey, if you could do 10 stories in this community, what would you do? And they're gonna give you 7 that you didn't think of. And now you've got a giant story bank that you can pull from. And 12-month schedule of actions planning ahead. Don't think that this is something that you can just do spontaneously, because you're not going to do it. When I have some free time, then I'll do this story. No, it's not gonna work. Replace some hour of your marketing work that you're doing with being in a business and saying, hey, I'm gonna ask you 3 questions. Replace it, make it a part of your schedule so that you'll actually do it. Otherwise you won't. And then 6 months will go by and you haven't done a single story. Okay, this is the super fun part. Step 2, the photos. Raise your hand if you think you're a great photographer. Everybody raise your hand. Everybody. Because the thing about taking a great photo is light, environment, and emotion. Light, environment, and emotion. We're going to talk about that, but this is what I want you to do. We're going to practice this interview part. Because I want you doing something. So, what kind of questions should I ask? What kind of things should I do? What kind of approach should I take to this conversation that I'm about to have? My encouragement, like based on the keynote today, is always to listen. You gotta listen to the people. But there are some basic kind of universal themes that are, if you cover them, are going to make your stories more attractive. Remember, it's not necessarily about the business, it's about the person. So think about things like the why behind what they're doing. What's their purpose? Why are you renovating this building? And dig deep on it. Like, well, because I grew up and my grandpa had this historical building down the street and he always took me in. I could run around the halls and I thought that was so cool that I was like running around history. That's the why. Talk about challenges and how they've overcome those. Raise your hand if you've encountered some kind of challenge in your life. There you go. Like that's the universal uniting factors that life is hard. So talk about that. What's been the greatest challenge you've had to overcome with this project or this business or in your life or anything like that? What do you love? What do you love about what you do? What do you love about this project? What do you love about this place? So the why, challenges, and then that emotional part of loving. Okay? So we're going to practice this. For 3 or 4 minutes, you're going to be interviewing the person next to you. So you're going to be the interviewer, you're going to be the interviewee. And you're going to try to listen, you're going to try to dig out some kind of story, some kind of emotion, and then you're going to hear me say switch. And then the interviewee becomes the interviewer. Okay? 3, 2, 1, go. What I love about the conversations was as soon as I was like, hey, interview the person. All of a sudden I saw a body language, a really open body language, which is what I love. Stay off your phone, stay off writing, stay off any of those things. Remember, from the marketing perspective, the better conversation you have, the better your marketing is going to be, because somebody's eventually going to come out with some emotional story, some kind of gold nugget. And if you're not paying attention to it, you're not going to hear it, or they're going to give you some kind of clue, and you won't be able to dig into it because you missed it. So the body language became very open. You have to have some kind of rapport before it starts, because as soon as I say, hey Matt, can I come over to your shop for an interview? What are people's reaction going to be? Nope. Nervous. I don't know what to say. They're going to give me the questions ahead of time, all of this other stuff. I mean, they're going to be completely in their brain. I know, because when I get interviewed, I'm the same way. I do this for a living. And so as I say things like, hey, can we stop by for, I just want to share the story of your business. Can I come by? It's like a 10-minute conversation, and then I'm going to take a picture with you. Notice how you use the word conversation. That I can do, an interview I can. So you're building that rapport ahead of time. And then when I walk into the business, especially if it's the business that I haven't really been in before, I don't really know the person. I'm gonna walk in, I'm gonna like, oh my goodness, it's so beautiful in here. Oh, it smells so great. Oh, this is so cute. I'm doing something to really show the people that they can trust me. Is there a little bit of manipulation? Yeah. It's benevolent manipulation because you want them to trust you. So you're making them feel good, you're making them feel at ease. And then we're like, hey, can you just sit down and I just want to ask you some questions, kind of get your story. I set down the phone, I'm gonna hit record and I'm gonna tell them why. It's like, I'm not going to publish your voice on the internet anywhere. This is simply so that I can quote you accurately later on. And then you sit back and you have a great conversation. Keep in mind that some of these people that you're talking to, they've never been interviewed a day in their life. Some people are shy as a wood board, and it's going to be a difficult conversation. So, asking people why is a great question. It causes them to dig a little bit deeper. Like, what do you do? I'm a Main Street director. Why did you want to become a Main Street director? Using the phrase, tell me more. I graduated college and then I went off to Vietnam, and when I came back from Vietnam, I didn't really know what my next step was. Then I got this job, and then my uncle sold this business to my dad, and my dad didn't want to run it, and so then he passed it on to me, and that's why I'm running this business. Are you comfortable telling me about your experience in Vietnam? Do you see how that's where the nugget of the story is? Tell me more about that. They're gonna gloss that over because they're trying to tell you what they think that you want to hear. So don't be afraid, but like, can you tell me more about that? Tell me more about your grandma. Tell me more about that bicycle that you had. Tell me more about that barbecue. Tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. That's the default. You don't have to be a great interviewer, right? If you're just listening and you're like, oh, they have to tell me more details about that. Tell me more. Why? So after the conversation, then it's time to take the photo. And nobody raised their hand earlier when I said, hey, raise your hand if you're a great photographer, but you are a great photographer because you have a camera in your pocket that I would have paid $10,000 for when I started. And it's in your pocket. So technology isn't the issue. Some rules are the issue. One, think about the light. You're about to take a photo of somebody. You have to go where there's good light because the sensor in your phone is so small that it needs a lot of light to be fed accurately. This dark corner, no. That's the biggest light source. There's a little light source right here, but do you see how dark this corner is? Can't get a good photo there, you just can't. So where am I gonna go? I see right here, this looks like the most light in this section. In the business, it might be by a window, by a lamp, in the back room where you have some light. So immediately I'm looking for light sources. So right here, I've got the most light. Cool. After I've located the light, then I think about the environment. It's tricky because sometimes where the light is, the environment, like right here, it says conference room, not really intriguing. So these rules you kind of have to weigh. It's not going to be a Pulitzer Prize winning photo every single time. You kind of have to weigh like, okay, the light is really good, but the environment kind of stinks. You got to weigh it. If you look up at the screen, here are some examples of light. Notice how Toyo is on the left, Alex is on the right. On Toyo's face, where is the light source located? Raise your hand and point to the direction. Where is the light coming from? Yeah. Do you see how his face is going from light to dark? Imagine that right side of the frame is the window. Notice how I placed him sideways to the window. What that's going to do is, now you can look at me. What that's going to do is this part of the face closest to the window is going to be brighter, and as the face moves away from the window, it's going to be darker. That adds shape to the face. It makes the portrait more flattering. If this was the window, let's say this is the window, and I stood between the window and him, it's just going to be flat. Boom. What? It's going to be okay, but you're not going to get that same drama. Same thing with Alex there. You see a lot of intense light coming from the right to the left. She's beautiful, so it makes a very easy photo to do. A great job of it. Rush B on the left. He's a music producer that worked with Lil Wayne, grew up in Saginaw. I got done with an hour and a half long interview with him, and he's like, Phil, do you want to go back to where it all started? I was like, Rush B, you know I do. And he took me to his grandpa's house, and we walked down into his grandpa's house into this dingy basement, and into this back room where he used to lay on the floor with his brother, and they would write raps on little pieces of paper. And there's one single light bulb in this room. And I said, Rushdie, can you just stand right underneath that light bulb? And you see it right there, light, dark. Tom Trombley, historian, Saginaw, absolutely brilliant man. When he passes away, so much of Saginaw's history is going to go with him. He's an absolute encyclopedia, terrified of getting his photo taken. Absolutely terrified. So I said, Tom, can you just stand by that window for me? And I'm just gonna adjust some settings on the camera so you don't have to look at me or anything. Really, I'm taking photos of him as he's looking out the window. Because I know as soon as he looks at me, he's not gonna like that. It doesn't matter anything I do to try to get him to smile, it's not gonna work because he's terrified of getting his photo taken. So I got a really great dramatic photo of him looking out the window. Antique store, this is a great example of the environment, rule number 2. I took her and I set her right in the middle of her beautiful antique store. It's dark just because of the projector, but you see all the beautiful glass. You would be able to see some signs written in German. You've got this lamp in the foreground. And so sometimes the easiest way to take a great photo is this rule. Take someone, put them in someplace cool. In front of a mural, in front of a historical building, holding a tool that no one has ever seen before. And I don't know if there's an example in this one, but when I was in South Carolina last time, a woman that had this fantastic bakery, and I was like, hey, Marlene, what do you think about putting every single thing that you make on this table? And we spent 20 minutes filling up this giant table, and I said, can you just sit here? And it's a gorgeous photo because it's just like, boom, cornucopia of baked goods. Doesn't matter anything. I just set the stage for, and the environment did the work. Saginaw boxing gym. He looks like a boxer. He's holding gloves. There's bags around him. I took him, I put him in a place that would help tell the story. This is in Pomeroy, Ohio. He is a bank manager, absolutely one of the most passionate people for his community. And I drove into Pomeroy, and the sun is rising over the Ohio River. And I saw it, and I parked the car and I went sprinting into this bank, and I had never met Ben before. And I ran into the bank, I was like, Ben, my name is Phil, I'm a photographer, we gotta go. And I ran to the river with him, and we ran to this river because here is the sun coming over the Ohio River, and he's standing in front of this steamer called the Mud Sock, okay? He's just a guy, dressed in a suit with his hands in his pocket. But do you see how the environment makes it? And so I took him and I put him in a cool place. Rule number 2, the environment. Naisha, a great art exhibit about Black experience, Black art. I said, hey, we got to show that. This black box was in the art museum, and they called it Big Mama's house. And so I was like, Naisha, can you just go stand in that doorway? I let the environment help tell the story. This is the only senior photo shoot I've ever done in my life, because this is one of my former 5th grade students. And I took her to the beach. She's absolutely goofy, and that's the only reason why I said I'd do it. And I said, hey, can you just take this, like preserve her, put it on your head? She's like, yeah, I will. So not everything has to be a serious photo. You can have fun with it. How do you get real reaction from people? You raise your camera and you say, oh, girl, you're looking so cute today. And then you click. I'm getting Erin as she's laughing. She's like, oh, Phil, stop it. Fabrizio on the right from Niles, Michigan. They're in Las Vegas. They moved to little old Niles, Michigan. Have absolutely the best coffee baked goods you'll ever see anywhere. And I told her so right before I took this photo. I was like, hey, I am not a smoke puller, but I'm going to tell you that this is some of the best food I've had effing anywhere. And she started laughing. That's how you get that real emotion. I love my mother-in-law. I hate it when she takes pictures of us, because it's like. I mean, you're not gonna get a real reaction because you're taking too much time. So tell them something funny, do something weird, say something, do interact with them in some way to try to pull some kind of emotion out. You're gonna practice this right now with the person that you interviewed. You can go anywhere in this room, you can go out in the hallway, you can go anywhere you'd like. I'm gonna give you 5 minutes to take only one photo. You cannot press the shutter more than once.